Hello Facebook, welcome to this edition of Nasdaq Reads. Thank you so much for joining me from all over the world. My name is Shetty. I'm the host and filmmaker if you've never met me before. And in a moment, I'm going to be introducing you to our phenomenal guest. But just before I do that, if you've never joined a live with me, these are the rules. If you like something, press the like button. If you love something, press that love button. And the most important thing is press that share button so that lots more people all over the world can tune into our discussion and conversation today. So I'd love for you to know our guest, meet our guest, be introduced to our guest, and just a bit about him. He's a truly remarkable individual. He was born in Chicago in 1950, and at the age of 19, hitchhiked across London all the way to India. He's lived in Himalayan caves, he's advised CEOs, he's met governments, he's met people who are in extremely high positions, and at the same time has built food distribution programs, distributing over 1.2 million meals per day, hospitals, schools, and is the author of the New York Times best-selling book, The Journey Within. I'm so blessed and honored to have with me in the studio today His Holiness Radhanath Swami. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jay. It's truly an honor to be with you.
Often we find that when we hear about monks, when we think about monks, you've been a monk for over 40 years now, we usually think that monks are very calm, peaceful, not busy people, but it sounds like you're doing a lot of things all year round. How do you manage to keep the balance?
In our tradition, we have three principles that we consider really helpful. One is satsang. That means as much as possible to keep the company of people who really inspire us, enlighten us, balance our lives. Two is sadhana, to have a spiritual practice where we can go deeper within our own selves and find, that treasure, that wealth within us. And then sadachar, to perform our duties or our work within this world to our full capacity, but as an expression of that happiness, that joy, and that love that we discover within our own selves. There's no greater joy than sharing what is innate within us. Because God's love is inconceivable and unlimited, and it's accessible to everyone, whoever we are, just by taking that journey within.
Mm-hmm. Now this book, The Journey Within, that you just mentioned there, has phenomenal reviews from people like Dr. Cornel West. You've got academics, you've got Russell Brand, who's an actor and a comedian, reviewing the book. You've got people from the United Nations reviewing the book. For you, who is this book written for, and why?
It's written to help all people who are seeking a more meaningful experience and purpose in life.
And that can be applied to anyone. You can be absolutely anyone who can read this book, anyone who's a seeker, anyone who's opening up their life. Maybe you're a corporate person who's going through corporate difficulties and challenges. Maybe you're someone who's just working a simple job but also has their own challenges. It could be absolutely anyone.
Just like you say.
Yeah. Amazing.
Because we all have such a common harmony among us. There's a beautiful verse in Bhagavad Gita, Vidyavanaya Sampane Brahmani Gabihastini Suni Chaiva Swapakicha Pandita Samadarshana. That a really meaningful life is when we could see every living being with equal vision. We see the spiritual potential in everyone. And in that way, whatever our social situation, whatever our religion, whatever our occupation, we all have this capacity to experience that divine love that's within us, and then to express it through whatever we do in our life.
So part one of this book is called The Big Questions. And I love that title because I think we all have so many questions in today's world. Google's whole business started from that platform of people wanting to ask questions, and we now have Google Home. But you say one of the biggest questions that we need to answer is, what is true wealth? Now, I thought that was a very interesting question. We're sitting today in Nasdaq. We're sitting at a stock exchange. We're sitting in the middle of Times Square. But we'd love to hear your perspective on what is true wealth.
There's a saying, that we can understand how wealthy we are by counting how many things we have that money cannot buy. True wealth is having a fulfilled heart. And there's only one thing that can fulfill the heart, and that's love. To love and to be loved. Things could give some fleeting satisfaction to the senses and to the mind, but things can never give satisfaction to the heart. Only to love and to feel loved. That's what everyone ultimately is seeking in their life. But somehow or other we're seeking through so many distractions. But when we harmonize whatever we do with that love, which has its origin in the nature of the very soul, because the conscious force within everyone, in all species of life, is spiritual. It's that conscious force. In Sanskrit, it's the Atma. In English, it's sometimes called the soul, who's seeing through the eyes and hearing through the ears and tasting through the tongue and thinking through the brain and feeling through the heart. We are that consciousness. We are that spiritual essence. And we're a part of the Supreme Being, who has many names. God, Ram, Krishna, Allah. These are all names of that one supreme origin of all beings. And that supreme origin is essentially the source of all love. That love is unlimited and endless. And we have access to that. And the purpose of all spiritual paths and religions or dharmas is to simply reconnect us to that source of love. And then to be an instrument of that love in whatever we do, whether we're in the stock exchange or in business or engineering or science, farming, politics, or little swamis like me. Whatever, we could all make an incredible contribution. The real value of life is not just the quantity of what we give or take, but it's the quality of the intent in which we live our life.
And that's often so forgotten, that beautiful point you just raised about the intention, the why behind the how and what we do. Often we're so caught up in what we're doing every day and how should we do it, but we're not very clear on why we should be doing it. And I think that question's really being raised a lot more now in the world that we see, in business, in politics, in all areas of society. So it's brilliant to have so many of you tuning in online right now. Thank you so much for being here. If you have just joined us, I'm speaking with Radhanath Swami, the author of The Journey Within. You can press the like button. I'm seeing all of that energy flying across screen. Keep that coming. And you can press that share button if you feel someone in your Facebook network today needs to see this. Keep your questions and comments flying in today as well. Now, one of the questions that I really had is it possible to live a spiritually conscious lifestyle in today's fast-paced, hectic world? It almost seems like there's a paradox there. We wake up in the morning, we have thousands of emails to look at. As soon as we walk out the door, there's lots of messages and notifications. And we're constantly flooded by information. That transformation feels very far away. Can you please enlighten us on that and how we can actually live spiritually in a crazy, hectic world?
It begins by having a spiritual perspective. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells, Bhoktaram jagatapasam sarva lokamaheshwaram. It's what the Vedas call the peace formula. Begins by understanding that I am not the proprietor. Because proprietorship indicates that we have control. And ultimately, we really don't have control over the things that we're trying to acquire or keep. Because either through the situations of the world or time itself, we have to leave this body that we're in death. So what really is ours? The opportunity, the most beautiful, wonderful opportunity to feel ourselves caretakers of sacred property. And when we understand that, then our life is to earn with integrity and to spend with compassion. We could be working really, really hard, very determined to succeed, but not with greed, not with arrogance, not with fear, but the basis, the foundation of whatever we do can be compassion. When we harmonize these principles, and through our meditation or our yoga or our prayer or whatever our spiritual connection, and ours we chant these beautiful mantras, it tunes us in with that inherent divine nature that is within us, which is an ever-gushing spring of compassion. Compassion is the love we discover within ourselves when it's expressed within this world.
It's incredible. I think that we've talked for so many years and decades about everyone finding their passion projects, but there's such a need for people to find their compassion projects and finding ways in which we can use our skills for a higher purpose and the way we can engage them. Now, you work with several individuals, several organizations, several groups who are able to do that. What are some of the incredible transformations you've seen, or what have you seen that it takes for an individual to really take up those higher principles? What does it require of that individual?
It begins by making it a priority. What we prioritize in our life, somehow or other, we'll make time for that. Because we're all so busy. But somehow or other we have time to go to sleep. And we have time to eat. And we have time to, relieve nature's calls when we have to go to the bathroom. Why do we make time for these things? Because we really can't function well in anything unless we balance our lives. So that balance is important. We have our families. We have our occupations, our health, our recreational needs, but we also have our spiritual needs. And from a spiritual perspective, to balance all of them is a fulfilling life. If we neglect any of those, if we neglect our families, our life's going to be off balance. If we neglect our friends, if we neglect our occupation, but if we neglect our spiritual needs, then everything else in life remains on quite a superficial, uncertain, shallow level. Spirituality brings depth to everything else we do. And that depth is to live with love.
You're always traveling and guiding so many people. There are so many people, so many organizations, groups. I've seen that you've spoken at EY, HSBC, also saw that you recently spoke at the Bank of England. I was interested, seeing as you're advising so many people, I was wondering what's the best advice that you ever received in your journey as a student yourself?
When I was a little boy, it was my mother's birthday, and I forgot. And I came home from school and I realized, so I ran in the backyard, and she had a little rose garden. We had a tiny backyard, and she just had 3 rose bushes, and I broke a rose off, and I ran in and I said, "Happy birthday, Mother." She took that rose, which I stole from her. She put it to her head, to her nose, to her heart, and she cried in joy. She said, "It's not the thing that is given or received that gives satisfaction. It's the intent, the love in which it is given and received. She said, this rose is more valuable than a diamond ring or a pearl necklace because you gave it with so much affection. And that was like a seed within my heart. And later on, through my spiritual teachers and ultimately my guru, Srila Prabhupada, I understood how this sense of love could expand to that point of feeling the Supreme Being or God's limitless love and tapping into that love, which is the nature of the very soul, who we are, and then sharing that love in whatever we do. And I've seen people who are CEOs of major corporations, politicians, very active people, very successful people, but they're not doing it out of fear. They're not doing it out of arrogance. They're not doing it out of greed. They're, as I said, they're earning with integrity and spending with compassion. And they're making such a difference in so many people's lives. The world needs that. It's not a sectarian concept. It's universal.
And I find also that's a beautiful answer. Thank you so much for telling us the story about yourself and your mother. And I was just thinking that so many people today, it's a Monday morning in some parts of the world. We're on a Monday afternoon here in New York. Monday is one of those days that people don't look forward to. It's the start of the work week. People are feeling really depressed or sad or down, and they're walking to work. They're trying to get that coffee to wake themselves up in the morning. What inspires you in tough times? When things aren't going well, how do you find motivation? How do you actually move forward in those times?
When we look for the opportunity we have, both in the sunny and stormy times of our life, then we can grow in every situation. When it rains, it may create an inconvenience, but we know that it actually helps all the flowers to grow. So similarly, the stormy times of our lives are one of the most precious gifts we have to grow in wisdom and to humble ourselves, to seek shelter of a higher power that's within us.
I really wanted to hear about some of your projects. So we were speaking about sustainability earlier, and I know that you have this wonderful eco-village in India. And I was thinking that this is such a wonderful example for sustainability. Just if you could share that with our audience, just to understand how the knowledge and wisdom actually is implemented in a very practical sense.
Everything's connected, and everyone's connected when we see things realistically. If we want to be compassionate to other humans, to really make it real and full, we have to understand our relationship with each other, our relationship with other species of life, and our relationship with nature. Because we're all dependent on the same air to breathe, and the same sunshine, and the same water that's in the rivers and the lakes. So compassion to humanity is to take sincere responsibility for Mother Nature and to live with this principle. Our eco-village is, in our humble way, trying to express an example of this. We have water harvesting because in Maharashtra state of India, 8 months a year is total drought. But during the monsoon rains, we store the water, we conserve the water, and for all our crops and all our homes, it supplies water throughout the 8 months. We build our homes with compressed earth from our own ground to make bricks that last for centuries. We have an eco-friendly natural sewage system to make every time you flush the toilet, it becomes pure water. that can be used for so many constructive things. So these things are simple technologies that could be utilized everywhere in the world. And when people see that it works, they develop faith and they understand the meaning behind it. And many villages, towns, and cities are getting inspired to implement these in their own ways. Interestingly, we have PhDs from some of the major universities throughout the world and simple villagers who live in farms working together hand in hand, heart to heart, to develop these technologies and these lifestyle alternatives.
It's so wonderful from my perspective to hear about that unity. Often it's so hard to get people to work together. And the fact that you're saying that people from different walks of life, different backgrounds are coming together to create something is really quite unique and quite special. I mean, what advice would you give to people, you know, when you live in a busy city, when you're, as you said earlier, when your motive or your intention sometimes becomes greed or ego or etc., all of these things, it's very easy that we all create tension and friction in our communities with each other. What advice do you have for people who want to be agents of change in their own communities and people who can also help give that, disperse that feeling of positivity amongst others around them?
In Sanskrit, there's a beautiful phrase, param dristva nivartate. That means we deal with situations, relationships, from a higher principle, from a higher experience. And that's the need in the world today, that we understand that higher principle within ourselves, what we actually have in common with each other, with nature, and then our relationships actually, because we have so many differences, and we have so many things to fight about. There's limitless things to fight about in this world and to disagree about. But there's one thing that outweighs all of those, and that's the higher principle of why we should be united. Because we're all the children of the same source. And how I treat other people, amanina manadena, is how I'm going to actually have a really meaningful, fulfilling life. Compassion, again, is the basic principle. What do we have in common? What is the higher goals that we need to achieve together in the form of various religions or various nations, various races, different sexes, different social positions or economic positions? We have so many differences, what to speak of different species. But when we find harmony with ourselves, then we can actually perceive and live in harmony with others. And that's the higher principle.
Incredible, yeah. It's,
unity in the world is not possible just by legislation. It's only possible when we develop a higher consciousness and we relate to each other for these higher purposes in life. Because we are all intimately related, and we recognize that, appreciate that, and live with that to the degree we understand our own relationship with our body, mind, and soul. Just like different parts of the body, we have the heart, the lungs, the pancreas, the eyes. They all have a different color, a different shape, and a different function. But it's not that one is trying to get the credit. Every part of the body is serving every other part of the body, because that's the only way any part of the body can truly be healthy. And in our social body, with all of its differences, we really need to address the core problem that ancient teachers and wisdom and contemporary people who really care are trying to enlighten us with, and that is to live in harmony. The body, the mind with the soul with the Supreme Soul, and through that with each other and with nature.
Phenomenal. I think that's such a wonderful message and note to leave you all on. I hope that this session has been extremely insightful for you. This segment of Nasdaq Reads, where we feature the journey within author His Holiness Radhanath Swami. You can find the link with you. I'm sure you can order the book right away if it's something that you want to grab hold of after this conversation. It's got phenomenal big questions that it looks into answering, practical tips as to how to apply it in your day-to-day lives as well. Radhanath Swami, it's been an absolute honor having you here in the studio. Thank you so much for your guidance, steer, and wisdom.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you that have been watching at home. Remember, you can still press that share button so that people don't have to miss it this evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are in the world. My name's Jay Shetty. Thank you so much for having joined us today.